Hello and welcome to the webcast, Learn How MBA Drives Financial Performance with Oracle Analytics. The webcast will begin shortly. In the meantime, I have just a couple housekeeping items to inform you about. Today's webcast is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recorded presentation within 24 hours after the end of the broadcast. There will be a short question and answer section at the end, so go ahead and enter your questions at any time during this presentation in the Q&A box to the right. You can see an image here, and if you don't see it on your screen, you can open it up from the widget bar at the bottom of the screen. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, you can first try hitting refresh on your browser. That often will correct a lot of issues. And otherwise, you can click on the help icon, which is the first one shown here, and the On24 experts can help you with any issues that you might have. We are very lucky today to be joined by Saad Syed from Emtec and Mike Russell from National Veterinary Associates, and they're going to take us through this incredible case study. So now over to you, Saad.
Thank you for the housekeeping and general announcements, Tracy. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our discussion of National Veterinary Associates, or NVA's, implementation of Oracle Analytics Cloud. My name is Saad Syed, and I'm the Analytics Practice Director for Emtec. Emtec is the Oracle partner who worked with NVA to implement the Oracle Analytics Cloud solution and Emtec's own proprietary financial variance analysis solution set, which sits on top of the OAKS environment. From NVA, we have Mike Russell with us to talk a little bit about this project, and I'll let him introduce himself. So please go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Saad. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. My name is Mike Russell, and I work for National Veterinary Associates, or NVA. I serve the company in a financial systems capacity. My team and I serve the finance and accounting groups, as well as the field operations team for all things finance and accounting. We make sure that the system side of the house works properly so that finance and accounting can continue to do what they need to do for month end, and then ultimately report for financials, and also that entails everything in between: tax, audit, variance analysis, trend analysis, and budgeting, one of the key components of that. I'm looking very forward to sharing more with you, and I appreciate the opportunity again to be here. All right, so moving right into the beginning here with the budget landscape here at NVA. NVA is a holding company. We own and operate hundreds of veterinary hospitals and pet resorts, several sites all throughout the United States, Canada, also in Australia and New Zealand. The key thing here is that these sites are freestanding and independent. The culture here is very much to provide the autonomy to those sites to continue to operate as they always have. Historically, many of these sites, these were businesses all on their own, and they are used to being able to see their financials, to work with their budgets, how they like to do them. And once we purchase them, we want to provide them with new tools. Historically, those tools were Excel spreadsheets, and swapping Excel spreadsheets, in many cases, hundreds of them, across shared folders, getting into private networking, and then connecting to our network. And the logistics of that were challenging. So being able to leverage the PBCS tool allowed these multiple budget owners, all of these resort managers and site managers, hospital managers, the field operations team, to be able to view on a web portal a standard template with all of the calculations and pieces needed in PBCS to allow them to build out their budgets. It did distribute ownership, as noted on the slide here, that it gave the autonomy and that independence back to the sites, and allowed multiple people to view all at the same time. You can imagine that having the single source of budget data then yielded new opportunities for monthly review and reconciliation. As noted there, the need for it was critical. As we became more sophisticated and the budget developed out, we started asking more and better questions. Well, how could we leverage this for the future? which took us to the next point beyond just budgeting, but then into monthly reporting and variance analysis. Analysis in general, trending, variances, all that kind of good stuff. So as noted in the final bullet of the previous slide there, the critical need for monthly reconciliation is what gives the accountability to the sites and the field operators that are held accountable for their performance financially. In our business, EBITDA is the name of the game. So being able to control revenue and drive revenue, control costs, and ultimately leads to better margins. And the way you can have visibility to that is a good tool and a good reporting tool. Therefore, I want to talk a bit about the reporting landscape at NVA, both where we have been historically and then where we are and where we're going. As noted here, we had and continue to have multiple systems which we're trying to consolidate. We had Oracle PBCS for the budgeting, as noted here, the specific spreadsheets for budget as well as for the month-end reporting and quarterly reporting, and the legacy ERP or RGL system, Microsoft Dynamics SL. And having that data all working in concert, though it's harmonious because we work really hard to do so, my team and I, to make sure that it all works, it can be cumbersome and can be heavy when it comes to the efforts needed. As noted here, the manual process, absolutely true. We have to compile reports manually and distribute them accordingly. For month end, we publish reports in Excel and get them out on shared folders. It is time consuming. We have several resources here that have to take care of that, and it adds time to the month-end close, which is already a very arduous process in general. The access and the know-how challenges. Being able to get the department and hospital site managers, as well as the field operations team, the absolutely correct training to access their data and to build reporting. It's very challenging to do that across multiple Excel spreadsheets with different formulas. Folks go in, they hard code numbers. All those logistics were very trying on multiple people here and out in the field. And then finally, the bottlenecks noted. The FP&A team, our financial planning and analysis team, had a lot of work to do and still does. But the historical setup was that many people would come to multiple analysts asking the same questions over and over again. You could see that there were opportunities for efficiency gains and a ubiquitous training structure to get people all looking at one system, one single source of data, and that was allowing for better, again, month-end reporting and the kind of analytics that we want to have happening at the sites as well as here at the support center, the corporate support center. Now let's talk a bit about the ideal state where NVA wants to be and where we currently are going. One of the key factors here, leveraging PBCS and ultimately OAKS, is this idea of an assembly line structure. The budget process takes us several months, and it starts many, many months before the actual fiscal year begins. That is the beginning point. From that point forward, there's a tremendous amount of effort across the organization, budget owners, field operations, financial systems, myself and my team, the folks here in finance and accounting, the FP&A team, all working in concert to create a budget. That assembly line begins there, and as we move forward through review of the budget, eventually finalization and approval, and then finalization of the budget, there is then, once the fiscal year begins, you have financial results, of course on a monthly and then a quarterly basis, and those actuals are being booked and then posted and reported at the GL level. and then compared to the budget that was made all those months ago. And that idea of from the beginning to the end and having a running tally of how the business, the site is doing at the site level, and then of course the regional level, and then the divisional level, and then eventually all the way to the whole of NVA. And being able to roll that up into one clean report that you can then slice and dice and look at across whatever view or perspective you need. But ultimately, from start to finish, with a single point of data flow, that it gives a fantastic amount of ability to NVA that was not there previously. The structure of NVA, that decentralized nature, and what you might want to think of as a franchise model, obviously not exactly like a franchise, but similarities. The environmental needs necessitates an on-the-fly ability to review financials at any moment. You've got hospital managers and doctors, and then of course the field ops team. Some of them might go in late at night, early in the morning, the weekends, sometimes on a holiday. You never know. These people are running a business, and as a result, when you've got that kind of autonomy, you need to be able to get stuff on demand. That's why these web tools of PBCS and OAKS were so critical. As noted here, the single version of the truth, absolutely paramount for folks to not have different versions of spreadsheets, this number versus this number. Everybody goes and looks at the same number for actuals and budget and variances. And that communication, that enables better communication, because we're not spending minutes or even hours trying to decide which number is the correct one, but we all know this is the number. Let's get down to the details. As noted here again, the slice and dice, as I mentioned before, self-service. We want and we encourage the sites to do their own analytics, to look at their numbers, and these tools allow them to do that. We wanted to move to that. Accessing accounting transaction detail. We're talking here about the debits and the credits. Again, to come back to what I talked about before, these sites are used to seeing their books. They've been running, like I said, for many cases, decades. And then all of a sudden, they don't have that anymore. We want to be able to give that back to them through a clean and concise and easy-to-use tool, an easy interface on the web. You log into a website, you can see your debits and your credits again. You can see what you're being invoiced for, what you're purchasing for cost of goods sold to operate business, what kind of revenue is coming in and where it's coming from, all at that GL level. It goes without saying that being able to efficiently publish standard financials, absolutely critical. Everybody wants to be able to look at a straightforward, simple template, understand what their income statement looks like, their balance sheet looks like, any specific ancillary reporting, revenue by category, facilities and administration costs, all those nice slices of their P&L. And of course, this all lends itself well to the specific tool and what those needs, how it fills those needs. Online, on demand, of course, the cloud, ability to plug into other cloud-based and on-prem solutions. This was certainly something that for us was so important as we moved from our old world and our antiquated world, the legacy systems of on-prem. We wanted to get into the cloud. So being able to plug into those old systems and extract data as we migrate, change can be challenging. So being able to bridge the gap between the old and the new is why being able to plug in to on-prem, and we've done that successfully. Low learning curve, absolutely important here. These folks out at the sites, they're working with animals. They are not sophisticated when it comes to certain technological. These folks are not going to go in and start doing advanced queries. They need the tool to do it for them. And by pointing and clicking these buttons, clicking these reports, letting things run, part of the reason they're part of our world is that we handle this. All the back-end office requirements we take care of. And of course, finally, low maintenance requirements. The cloud has been a real, we were looking for something that could be keeping, of course, overhead low because it's on the web. There's a lot of terrific advantages that comes from PBCS and with Oaks that would allow us to leverage, to keep maintenance costs down, as well as time. You know, when you're supporting on-premise environments, there's a lot of nuts and bolts to make sure you tighten and keep working. So this absolutely covers sort of the NVA's ideal state and gives you a bit of a precursor to how PBCS and Oaks could help solve those things. Now we get to the fun stuff, how NVA was able to achieve its ideal state and leveraged Oaks and utilized that product for all the reasons that I've mentioned here. Getting budget data in the cloud and then getting Oaks up and running has given us that web portal that I mentioned for looking at all financials and looking at all slices of financials at various views, the sites, the regions, all that good stuff. As noted here, there's a single instance of multiple sources. This is if the headwaters are the GL and the budgeting tool, this is where the downstream everybody can consume the reporting and the data for financials in a very easy to read and user-friendly application. And the truth is, these points here are very concise. Eliminating an entire day of our month-end close. We spent an entire day with resources, publishing financial reports to shared folders, Excel files, generating those Excel files, making sure they're available. That's an entire day shaved off, which gets data faster to the sites. And they're always eager. In many cases, we're talking about the second week of the month, towards the end of the second week that they're getting their financials for the previous month. One more day that they can have to get a sense of where they are and what they're buying and how their revenue is trending. Very, very, very good stuff there. Moving to the next point there, focusing on interpretation of data rather than gathering data. Absolutely a time saver. As I mentioned, so many site managers and field operations members are out there looking at the what happened, the number, instead of why. And this allows them to just focus on the why. They can see their margins, they can see where their numbers are coming in, and then get to understanding why that occurred. Did we spend too much? Why is revenue not coming in at targets? And allow them to brainstorm and strategize instead of just trying to figure out what number to look at. Of course, the quick and simple user training, that's absolutely, it takes all of a few minutes to understand our Oaks environment. It's a URL, you sign in, and once you're in quickly, you're looking at reports within a couple of minutes, and you're just exploring. And as a site manager, you're read-only. So you're going in and you're looking at data. And then you can start extracting, you can look at reporting, you can export and do your own analysis, work with your field operations unit, team leader to understand and to plan for the future. As noted here, the dynamic and interactive reporting. This certainly we've seen a tremendous workload reduction of one type of workload for the FP&A team. They are spending less time just getting them data, and now they're doing the A part of their job, which is analysis, and that they can recalibrate towards working on those far more robust and value-added efforts. Data is more secure. That is something that feels really good to know. In the cloud, we're protected, we're taken care of. We are talking about financial data. The sites want to know that their information is safe, and seeing it in the cloud, you log in, you know it's good, and there's a lot less anxiety around any kind of, oh, this spreadsheet went here, shoot, where did I send this? None of that. If I can talk, then switching over to the focused intelligence side, you've got budget owners who are empowered and control and more engaged. Again, sticking with our corporate culture, that decentralized nature, but each site can continue to operate as it needs. They get the reports, they're working with their team leaders, information comes back to the support center, and it's a good concert and a good effort. And you know, it really lends itself to better communication as a company. New acquisition onboarding greatly simplified. We are highly acquisitive here at NVA. We're always buying new sites, and getting them on board with our budgets and our reporting makes it feel like a well-oiled machine, which I think instills confidence and makes the sellers, these doctors that have sold to us, feel like they made the right choice. The last point there, which kind of doesn't, it's more specific to the here at the Support Center, the corporate side of things, the ability to leverage Oaks' S-based features and cloud-based data cubes. Now, on our side, in the Support Center, we have access to all this, and Financial Systems supports this effort. And this gives even better data to the analytics teams here that the sites can view as the data teams here are compiling information and sending it out or posting it in Oaks, all new and improved tools that we've never had available. Instead of large pivot tables in Excel, you've got interactive and live reporting happening on the web. So being able to give them that kind of tool is a great benefit.
What we'd like to do now is share with you a sample architecture diagram of the financial variance analysis solution that NVA deployed on its Oaks environment. There are four key components of the solution. The first being the EPM source, represented here in the top right-hand side. This is where your aggregate budget data flows in from your EPM solution. The second component is the ERP data source, which serves as the source for transactional detail flowing into the solution. The third key component is the Oracle Cloud Database, or PBCS, that serves as the foundation of your enterprise data warehouse, with the transactional detail being loaded in and dimensions being created and aggregates being created for the purpose of reporting. The fourth and final component, of course, is the Oaks application itself, which is where the cross-functional data model and front-end reports are developed. Now, something to point out here, for both the EPM and ERP data sources, we can have on-premise or cloud-based environments. In the case of the EPM source, whether it's on-premise or, as indicated by PBCS, the cloud-based versions of the EPM applications, they would still get plugged directly into the Oaks repository file. But with the ERP system, we have some options of how to get the data into the data warehouse where we ultimately need it to be in order for us to use it with Oracle Analytics Cloud. And with the on-premise ERP applications, what we can do is load them into a data warehouse before using Oracle's data sync tool to load them to this cloud database instance. Or if they are already a cloud-based application, such as in Workday or with Oracle's ERP cloud, we can directly use the data sync application to plug them in to the cloud database. Moving on to the front end, we wanted to share with you the look and feel of the financial variance analysis solution. Now, it's important to note that this sample is simply representative of the functionality available. Each implementation of the solution is tailored to the individual requirements and use cases of each client. If we look at the top left window, you'll see the main dashboard that drives the solution, which is essentially a set of reports driven by a common set of filters across the top there. If we look at the central report in that dashboard, it has an account tree in the left-hand column, which is coming from the EPM instance, and is consistent with how the data is structured in that instance. It's important to note that the FVA solution gives you the option to either replicate the account tree from EPM or set a display order that is different, one that is built specifically for reporting. We see use cases for both options across our clients. What's important, though, is that this connection to EPM is live. So as your data changes in EPM, or as your account tree itself changes, those changes are reflected immediately in the report, and no additional work needs to happen to sync the two. Drilling down into the account tree, users can get to the most granular level of data in the EPM application. It's represented here in the sample as the GL account balance. At this point, they can click on the value towards the right-hand side of the report and traverse into the secondary report, which is the bottom right-hand window you see there. This secondary report is a transactional detail that is actually coming from the ERP system. From the user's perspective, it's a seamless transition from the report sourced from EPM to the detail from ERP. However, behind the scenes, there's a robust data model in place to allow from that transition from one source system to the other. Now, the solution can allow for further drilled in detail or related information, and we've seen use cases where drilling to the AP subledger, for instance, may be followed up with navigating to a third report which has AP invoice detail, right, or AR invoice detail. So we see instances where people leverage some common data element or factor across multiple systems to allow for really multiple levels of detail. What it boils down to is that by making all this data available to users through just a few clicks, NVA is not only helping them work more efficiently by spending less effort to gather the data, but the insight that these users now have allows them to be in better control of their financials on a month-to-month basis.
Thank you so much, Saad and Mike. That was a great presentation. Now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. As I mentioned earlier, go ahead and enter any questions that you have in the Q&A box that's to the right on your screen, and we will be answering them in the order received. Thank you, Saad and Mike, and thank you to all who joined us today. This presentation has been recorded, and you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording, so you'll be able to review it. We are going to do a Q&A now, so if you have not yet entered your questions, you can do so in the Q&A box to the right. If you don't see the Q&A box, look at the little icons at the bottom of the screen. There's a yellow one towards the end, and that'll open the Q&A box for you. So now we'll get to your questions. The first question is, who are the end users for this solution?
The end users for the solution are the site managers and the field operations team out in the field that work with those site managers, as well as the doctors who are running the hospitals or the resort managers as well. And finally, internal here in finance and accounting and at the corporate support center are all utilizing the end state data.
Excellent, thank you. And can this product be used with the Autonomous Data Warehouse?
Absolutely, yes. From the NVA perspective, we have in the very near term plans to convert over to the Autonomous Data Warehouse, which enables a whole slew of new and exciting functionality. And so yes, absolutely. And Emtec, if they wanted to add some color as well.
Excellent.
Sure, yeah. Thank you. We absolutely did design this to be used with Autonomous Data Warehouse for those clients who do not have the desire to or don't have the ability to support DBA functions in-house or simply want to just offload a portion of their DBA responsibilities to a more managed environment. The Autonomous Data Warehouse definitely gives us that elasticity and flexibility to address use cases there.
Excellent. Thank you both. Here's a related question. Can you add other data sources to the OACS environment you've created?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The enterprise data warehouse that we've got in place is a foundational structure which allows you to connect through highly interactive and, as Saad said, elastic application programming interfaces, whether it be between Oracle and other products, Microsoft or anything to that effect, SQL possibilities. And so, yeah, you can connect other data sources to it as long as you have the universal mapping structure, not just an ADW, but also the classic database. Enterprise Data Warehouse enables that. Absolutely.
Excellent. And here's a good question. Who builds the data visualizations using OACS? Is it end users or still within IT? And there's actually a few that are related to this, all asking about the level of technical sophistication required.
That is an excellent question. Here at NVA, we currently have the data visualization only under the internal finance and accounting folks, mostly because they're more familiar with the data and they understand the structure of it, and they create ad hoc reporting or build up reporting and allow it to be published to specific end users. However, the capabilities are far more vast and all-encompassing. You can have various end users utilizing different portions of data visualization, excuse me, with different permissions levels. Let's say you have a power user, so to speak, out there that would want to get into the cloud and start making their own stuff. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing that keeps you that prevents you from doing so. But right now, the way we have it, the data consumption is a read-only out at the sites, and it's currently housed internally here with being able to create stuff. And then my team and I, we do most of the heavy lifting. But over time, that's the beauty of this, is as the company becomes more sophisticated, as the use case becomes more sophisticated, that functionality can grow with you and scale with you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And as a implementer who's seen this tool be utilized across a host of organizations, we see very non-technical users gaining a lot of traction with this tool simply because of the simplicity of the OACS interface. You don't need to be a SQL master. You don't need to understand, complex calculation functions in order to build a report. Its drag and drop interface really allows for a low learning curve. Now, what we strongly recommend with that is, even with that low learning curve, there are concepts and functionality that you need to expose to your user. So there is training regimens that are part of your implementation and knowledge transfer regimens that absolutely need to get users hands-on into the tool early so that they build the confidence as you go live. They have the confidence in their abilities to work with the tool. second part of that also is the organization's trust in their data. That's also key, right? You don't want an environment where it's the Wild West and people are just creating all sorts of what I would call black market reports or blacklist reports, if you will. You want to make sure that anything that's being put in front of the user, being made available in terms of content for them to build reports on, is vetted by the organization and is going through some level of scrutiny and standardization a little bit. But the end name of the game really is user enablement.
Excellent. And here's a good question. How did NVA approach security setup for their end users?
Another excellent question. First, the beauty of this product is security. There are multiple layers, all very easily fine-tuned, depending on the structure of your company. For us, we have a very complicated permissions and security setup. The end users out at the sites are read-only. We have our field operators that can see other pieces, their regions, their divisions, depending on the regional alignments. And then, of course, the corporate users here internally. And then there's layers of the corporate users and what they can see and cannot see. And that is where you can really take advantage of the structure for security here. Of course, data is far more secure in the cloud, a lot more secure than transferring massive Excel files across the across an email exchange program. But you can adjust and flip switches and effectively to grant access to something. You can even grant something temporarily and then take it back later, as long as you've got good system administrator and/or engineer that are aware of how the product works. And it's very, very intuitive, as Saad said. It's the user interface you can really tell that it was designed with both technical and non-technical people in mind. And to make the end user experience comfortable and easy.
Excellent.
Yeah, just to add to that, the one thing I wanted to say from a security perspective is because this tool works so closely with the EPM tool, the PBCS in this case, and there's a high level of integration between the two, we can leverage PBCS security in the Oaks environment. So users would only see reports for the accounts or departments or companies that they are budgeting for. So you have a level of consistency for what you have in the data entry point is what you can leverage or what you can see in the reporting aspect too. Conversely, you can remove that integration as well, so that if you do have scenarios where those two need to differ, that can be accounted for within Oaks as well. Go ahead, Tracy.
Excellent, thanks. Here's another one. How long does the solution take to implement?
It's a great question. Of course, depending on the use case. For us, we did it over time, meaning we initially booted up PBCS for budgeting, and that was within. It was an implementation several months, but that was a couple of years back. And then as we got into Oaks, that has taken, I think, between six to 8 months overall, and that was from end to end. I'm talking, once we actually got the approvals and moved forward, we had a lot of building to do. One thing to note is that an NVA, from a data perspective, we're trying to hit the fast forward button to get us up to speed here. So we did not come at this from a sophisticated angle initially, which is part of the reason why we had to kind of jump into the 21st century here. Anyway, so the Oaks product is really designed to be put up rather quickly once you have your structure and your mapping and all that. And so if you've got a lot of that already in place, I can see something like this being a very swift and agile implementation. Saad, if you wanted to add some more color.
Sure. So, yeah, you're right, Mike. With certainly with approvals and such, that adds on overall time. But if we look at purely technical implementation, The driving factors there are what the ERP system is at a client. If they have cloud financials, for example, the solution has pre-built extracts against cloud financials, and given the fact that Oracle Cloud Financial implementations are largely similar across clients, we can leverage these accelerators to where it is I believe it's a 12-week implementation end-to-end. That makes it faster. Of course, if there are other ERP systems, non-Oracle ERP systems, on-premise ERP systems, that does add some development effort into the mix. However, that's not hugely significant, and we're not doubling or tripling the time.
I'm glad Saad brought that up. Actually, just for the folks listening, we currently at NVA do have a non-Oracle ERP that this is interacting with. And so we were able to put this up within 6 to 8 months in what you might think of as a scenario that could be challenging, that we don't have an Oracle, the cloud financials going. But we were still able to do it, and everything ticks and ties. So.
Excellent. Yeah, and we did have one question about other dashboards and pieces that are working that work with the solution.
Okay.
Sure. So there are a host of dashboard capabilities available. We typically have built out base dashboards that serve as that serve to meet a generic need across what we feel would be typical budgeting, departmental budgeting, or P&L ownership. We haven't built out too much content because, as part of the implementation, as I said in the presentation, we do put emphasis on tailoring the content developed to meet the individual use cases of each client, to meet the individual use cases of each budget owner, right? So we do allow for a lot of development to happen during the implementation process.
Excellent. And here's a continuation of the earlier question. What adjustments would you make to PBCS in order to have a better OACS experience?
Great question. When PBCS was implemented a few years back, there was no Oracle presence here at NVA. The folks had not seen Hyperion. And so when the cubes were set up, they were set up properly, of course, and Emtec did a terrific job, but not realizing the potential of the tool that was purchased, it was set up kind of not handcuffed, but almost, kind of with the basics, because NVA didn't realize how sophisticated of a tool they'd purchased. So once, a couple people came on, myself included, that knew what you could really do with this thing, that enabled a lot more. And so in retrospect, I think really understanding dimensionality and realizing how you can put layers upon versions, upon scenarios, the multi-dimensional relational database that you've got with PBCS, and eventually if you have OAKS, you can really do some stuff. If you have sites, locations, if you set it up in a way that a DBA might think of it, so that standardization and structure. Standard of a site identifier, like let's say for hospitals, HSP 101, and not as the member name. That kind of thing can allow you to make that the primary key, and then you can key off of everything else with the accounts, the alignments, the regional structure. There's so much little stuff like that. Really understanding how relational databases interact. You can do a lot there.
Excellent. Thanks. And here, are you using non-ERP and EPM data into the reports and analysis?
Yes, it goes. So OAKS is a data consumption tool. So the information that they're getting, it doesn't go directly into OAKS from any external sources, but the headwaters being the GL and then PBCS down the line there, That's coming from offline Excel spreadsheets. That information's all going up into the cloud accordingly. So, yeah, there are non-ERP related information. There is non-ERP related information that is imported into the tool, but at a much earlier state, and then it flows down to Oaks. And that's what's so critical, is if you have the right people in place that understand data flow and what you heard me talk about earlier about the assembly line. You have your actuals, you have your budget, that starts months before, and then it all kind of goes down to where you get down to Oaks, and then you have transactional level detail that you can always tie back to your GL. So yes, that is absolutely possible. And even more so, we're only probably using this at an intermediate level. We want to make it far more advanced. So,
right.
Yeah.
And just to speak to that, Mike, I believe, without getting too much into the future, but there are plans of expanding the use case to include non-ERP data as well on the Oak side, even for reporting, to be able to really marry this data in and build out on the business processes that Oaks is supporting.
That's another great point, Saad. Yes, there are future use cases on the docket now for NVA. With this in the cloud, you can create, depending on what version of Oaks you purchase, you can create data cubes in the cloud. You can create databases up in the cloud. Limitless possibilities there. NVA had countless offline Excel spreadsheets, as I mentioned before, and those can now be put in the cloud and become living, breathing databases that are constantly updating, changing. And of course, you have the underlying architecture of Oaks being updated, patched, security, permissions, all that kind of stuff. It really opens up a world of difference, particularly if, as a finance organization, Excel is the name of the game. Having that S-base engine still running underneath the hood from decades past is really very powerful for a finance and accounting team.
Fantastic. And we're just about out of time. I think we have time for one last question. And this one I think has been covered quite a bit, but this is a little bit different. How does this differ from the reporting you were doing with PBCS?
Oh, great question.
Yeah,
go ahead, Saad.
Sorry, Mike. Yeah, this is really meant to enhance the reporting available in the PBCS application, not really serve as a replacement, but more of augment that capability. The key factor here is having the transactional detail from the ERP system and now be a part of the report. The PBCS reporting, you can report on your actuals and budget as long as you're loading your planning cubes appropriately, but you can only report to the most granular level where you budget at. And then with most organizations, that's at the GL account level. What is missing from there is then, okay, when you look at the actuals in the PBCS reports, what are the details that make up those actual values, right? That's where this solution comes in and enhances that reporting to be able to give you that next level of granularity and detail.
Excellent. And Mike, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on that?
No, Saad framed it perfectly. That's exactly 100% accurate.
Excellent. Good. Well, thank you both very much. We're going to go ahead and close the webcast today. Thank you, audience, for some really fantastic questions. It's really delightful when we get to have such a good interaction with the audience at the end of these webcasts. So hope you got a lot out of it. I know we did. You'll get the recording of this presentation tomorrow, and the PDF of the presentation will be available as well. Thank you very much, and have a great day.